Good Friday morning, and welcome to this week's episode of Finding God in the Dark. My name is Don Stevens. I serve the Asbury UMC in Woodstown, New Jersey, and I almost said Point Pleasant Beach, my old town, and St. John's UMC in Harrisonville, New Jersey. John?
Pastor Jonathan Campbell. I'm the pastor of Lacey United Methodist Church in Forked River, New Jersey.
Amen. So this week we are talking about um, really excellent film. 2003. The film is Mystic River.
Yeah.
It was nominated for a number of awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress. It won for Actor and Supporting Actor in the same year, which is a very rare
Weird
occurrence.
thing. Yeah.
And that was Sean Penn. Well, stars Sean Penn, Tim Robbins, Kevin Bacon, Laura Linney, Marcia Gay Harden. What a cast this is.
Oh yeah.
What an ensemble cast. Some of the best actors and actresses, I think, of our time. I particularly enjoy Laura Linney. I remember, have you seen The Life of David Gale?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was phenomenal in that film.
Yeah.
And Marcia Gay Harden does a sort of a reprising role on Law and Order SVU that just,
Who
I think she's
who was
amazing.
who was the female that was nominated?
Um,
For
uh,
Best Actor?
it was Marcia Gay Harden. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that
For
makes sense.
the Academy. Now,
Yeah.
Laura Linney was nominated for like Critics' Choice or something else, you know. So, I mean, it's really just an outstanding cast, right?
Yeah.
Directed by Clint Eastwood. Also, interestingly, the music was by Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
The score was by Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Um, the book that I'm keeping notes in
Yeah.
asked if I'd seen this movie before, and I thought I had.
Mhm.
But I think once I watched it, I don't think I may have seen pieces of it before, but I don't
Yeah.
think I saw the whole film before. So,
Yeah. The Sean Penn scene where they're discovering his daughter is on every clip show for acting. You know, you see that all the time.
yeah,
Is that my daughter in there?
I
Yeah,
might throw her in there.
it's
Yeah.
even gotten to a point where it's become a meme. Uh, yeah. Do you mind if I get something that I've been struggling with off my
Oh,
head?
please, you jump in, man. Don't let me dominate the conversation.
I mean, I had seen this a long time ago and I couldn't remember it. And there, it's been a long time since I've seen a really good movie that I so wanted to edit because the ending of that movie, I feel like they really take it down a notch. I feel like they should have ended it with the two of them on the street right to the river and not have that weird parade scene.
The whole, yeah, the parade.
Yeah, I did not under, it was almost like they were setting it up for the sequel or something, like,
Well, I think, I do. I don't make any secret about the fact that I read reviews and I read,
yeah,
like I actually went and read the
review for this.
review in
Yeah,
this on
yeah,
it, and stuff like that. And one of the things that it seems like they're building off of, or Eastwood's building off of, this theme
yeah,
of sort of family justice,
yeah,
right? So they had to, I think that there was a sense of they had to include the reunion of Sean and his wife, his estranged
yeah,
wife,
yeah,
and sort of the dissolution of Dave's marriage. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Where Dave's gone and Mike,
yeah,
his son, is looking for him. He's on the float and he's looking for him and he doesn't see him in the crowd.
yeah.
That sort of thing. So I hear what you're saying, right? It
I just,
feels like
I
it would
just,
have been a more complete
yeah.
ending if they just stopped there.
I really felt like the scene between Bacon and Penn,
Hmm.
where they basically say, I don't think I sometimes wonder if all of us never got out of that car.
That's the line I wrote
And
down.
and then him walking away drunk.
Hmm.
To me that was the right ending. That was just like end it there,
Right.
fade to black. I think the the whole thing where he's shooting, he's pointing a gun at him across the street. I was just like, it feels like you're setting up for a
Yeah.
sequel, and
And
I
Penn
know
going.
you're not going to do a sequel. So what are you doing?
But I think the implication there also is sort of an entire theme in the film, is that violence begets violence,
Yeah,
and that
it's
the
steampunk.
cycle isn't over.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen with Just Ray's kids
Yeah.
when, like is
Yeah.
now that now that Jimmy, Sean Penn's character, knows that Dave wasn't the killer, that it was the other kids, that, is he going to take revenge on them? Is there
Yeah.
some kind of revenge they're going to take on him? Is it, so the cycle, I think the implication is the cycle
Cycle of violence, isn't it?
continues,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the, it's funny because that's the line, it asks, is there a memorable line or a quote in the film? And that's what I wrote down when Sean, which is Kevin Bacon's character,
Yeah.
says, sometimes I think all three of us got in that car,
The color, yeah.
which,
Yeah, I wrote that line down too. I
yeah,
think.
for those who haven't maybe seen the film, first off, it's 21 years old. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Um,
Come on, man. Come on, catch up, catch up.
Come on. But I say that as someone who hasn't seen the whole film himself until yesterday. So anyway, but the thing is, the kind of the setup of the three friends as kids,
Yeah.
and one of them is abducted, and the implication is sexually abused for 4 days before he escapes, and how that's changed his life. And in a lot of ways, that makes Dave, that character's Tim Robbins' character, um, probably the most sympathetic character in the film, right? I mean, you want to understand Dave, and yet Dave's been through something that none of us, I think, can really understand. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Yeah. I think really, if you're gonna take the low hanging fruit on this movie about talking about how it connects to faith, I think the low hanging fruit is the idea of the violence piece you've been talking about.
Right.
That that Christianity really holds up what that sometimes we have bad theology that tells us God was mad and poured out, all God's anger on Jesus, and that was the point of the cross. But if you really read the text and really set with, especially the early church fathers, they understood this idea that at the center of the cross was kind of God responding to our violence with saying, "No, I'm going to end this with love."
Yeah.
You know, there's all this hatred and fear and anger and sin, and it needs to be dealt with. And how I'm going to deal with it is I'm going to overrun it and overflow it with love and forgiveness.
Right.
And so, part of the thing that you don't want to lose sight of, at least I feel like as a Christian, is violence doesn't solve anything. It may end the problem for a moment, it may end the problem for a season, but ultimately, violence just leads to more violence. And one way I like to talk about this is I say, think about all the wars you can think of. Like, to make it easier, think about the wars in American history and tell me the one that didn't lead to another war. Like, and the reality is you usually see after a war the seeds of the next conflict. You just it And so I think the primary Christian ideal is this idea that if we're going to end violence and hatred and fear, we're not going to end it with more violence, hatred, and fear. We're going to end it by repenting, by going the other direction and meeting that violence, hatred, and fear with love, forgiveness, and mercy. And to me, that's what this movie is about. This movie is about the idea that, I love that scene where Sean Penn is sitting on the balcony by himself and he's talking to his daughter who has been killed. And he says, I know in my soul I'm responsible for this somehow. I just don't know how.
Right.
That kind of idea of, the the problems of our generation are passed to the next, and then they're passed to the next, and that's a biblical idea too. This idea of, you know generation to generation to generation gets this almost this curse, and it's a curse because we keep doing the same, keep trotting the same ground.
Yeah. And as it is, I mean, if you reflect on it deeply, right? the when Penn says that, I feel like I'm responsible for he is.
Yeah.
He literally is, because he took away the father. He killed
Father.
the father of
Yeah.
the kid who killed his daughter.
Yeah.
And I came back to the term that kept coming up for me, in all of this back and forth, this violence, returns violence, is retributive justice, right? We
Yeah.
I know you and I have talked about that before, not on this podcast, but we have
Yeah.
talked about that before. In that, what does that truly accomplish?
Yeah.
And in this shocks some people that I'm one of those people who are, I'm on the right, I'm a conservative, except I despise the death penalty. I
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think I don't want the state killing people as a favor to me. Oh, we're making the community safer by killing people. No, you're not. You're not really.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, I think I understand. We live like we talked about in Niebuhr a week or two ago. I understand that you have to be practical on some level. You have to recognize that sometimes that, like, if someone is shooting somebody and you have to shoot them to stop, I don't think that's a sin. But I also recognize that the overarching idea that I'm going to solve the large problems in my life by being mean or tough or angry or violent, that just doesn't play out in the end. It just doesn't. It just
Doesn't.
doesn't.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. And I think this film demonstrates it brilliantly, actually, and
No,
and on a lot
I
of
really do.
levels and in a lot of subtlety. And you see really, ultimately, you see one act at the beginning of the film echoes through the lives of these three people, like their whole life, and this whole community is changed by that one act.
Well, that's the other piece of this that speaks to Christianity is this idea that our actions really matter.
Yeah.
That our actions have consequences we could not ever imagine. Like, can't remember the two characters' names that take Dave as a child and sexually molest him, but
I don't even think they gave them names. They might have mentioned
I think
something.
they say it at one point, but it's only once. But anyway, one's clearly you can tell this was written around the time that the sex scandal in the Roman Catholic Church was coming out, because
Right.
you never get it seen, but you see someone with one of the people that takes him has a ring that a priest would wear,
Right.
and,
The
so
gold
they're
cross
trying
on.
to, and also that's timely because it's coming. I think in 2003, the problem really came out in Boston. The Boston Globe did an amazing job of undercover work, or not undercover work, but investigative journalism to uncover this pattern of stuff. And one thing I do want to say is this is not just a Roman Catholic problem. This is a church problem because
We
unfortunately,
can't deny that. I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
happened in our own denomination,
yeah,
in our own conference.
yes. So I don't want to, but this idea of the two of them are just fixated on their own desires, their own selfish wants, really,
Mhm.
and they probably on some level can think to themselves, I may be hurting this child. You kind of wonder if they would have killed him if he wouldn't have escaped. That was maybe part of their plan. Who knows?
Right.
But they weren't thinking, this will affect his kids. This will affect his grandkids. And the movie does a nice job of saying this sin that's committed against Dave doesn't just affect Dave, it affects his wife, it affects his kid, it affects his friends, it affects his family, it affects his community.
Right.
And I don't think we do a good job, any of us, recognizing that my choice ripples out, whether I like it or not. My choice is good or bad, ripple out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're correct. And I think there was a beautiful piece of imagery that was there through the whole film.
yeah,
that in the very beginning, well, why did these two men who were posing as police officers stop them? Well, because the boys were writing in fresh cement,
yeah,
right? They were writing their names, and Jimmy wrote his name, and then Sean wrote his name, and Dave started to write his name, but
yeah,
they were interrupted by these two men who eventually abducted Dave.
yeah,
Dave never finished writing his name,
yeah,
and Dave's life is never whole from that moment on.
yeah. And Tim Robbins, who plays Dave, has a wonderful line. I can't remember exactly, but like Dave never got out of that cave, or Dave never got out of
Yeah.
that car. Like
Yeah,
he
well,
really,
Jimmy and Sean late at the end of the film, the scene you
yeah,
were talking about,
yeah,
right? It's the
yeah,
same idea.
yeah.
When's the last time you saw Dave? When he was in the back of
25
the
years
car
ago.
going down the street 25 years ago.
Yeah, but I don't, I don't think we do a good enough job, and that's probably why we sin over and over again. Probably, I don't think we do good enough job recognizing the damage we do. You
Yeah.
know, we tell ourselves, and even the only valuable part, or the only redeeming part of that last scene for me, even though I would still cut it out, is that last scene is when Laura Linney, the woman who plays Sean
Annabeth.
Penn's wife,
Yeah.
who he killed, Jimmy kills Dave wrongly, and she justifies it. She says, "Oh, I can't believe his wife would think such horrible things about it.
Right.
You're this strong man. You've shown your girls and you've shown me that you'll do anything to protect us." And it's like she justifies this horrible act that should not be justified.
Right.
And the thing that stuck with me about that scene was we do that all the time. We do
It,
that all
it's
the time. We justify the horrible stuff we do.
it's a familial protective ethic,
Yeah,
right? It
yeah,
is it is what she is lifting up in that scene. And
yeah.
what's really interesting is that scene starts with Sean Penn shirtless facing the window, and
Your
he's
gloves.
got a giant cross on his back, tattooed on his back,
Yeah,
right? Like almost like he's been crucified, like he's
yeah,
feeling it, and yet she takes him down off the cross.
yeah,
It's really powerful imagery.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Um, but I think for us as Christians, one good thing to take away from these movies is kind of go into, pull up John Wesley's 22 questions. Like come out of this movie, pull up John Wesley's 22 questions about how is it with your soul, and do an inventory.
oh my
you
goodness.
know but I think when we powerfully see things in our lives, whether they be movies or anything, that kind of remind us of how much sin damages other people, I think it's probably really good for us to think about how can I have a deeper conversation with myself right now about where I'm at, what I'm doing, what I could do different. you know Kind of
Yeah.
use them as a flag, as a marker to go, okay, it's time for me to do a little self-checking on my soul.
Yeah, time to do a little self-inventory. Yeah. And I mean, we all do. I think as parents, we probably do it more than any other time in our lives, right? Because
Yeah,
like okay, that situation with my kids didn't go well.
yeah,
How do I do that better next time, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you know that you're you're affecting your kids for their rest of their lives. In a real sense, we understand that echo,
yeah,
right? We understand how that's going to echo with our kids down through their entire lives. This film just, I think, brings it forward in a way that, maybe we don't think about as much. Um,
yeah,
and how it echoes in the community and, and through other families, not just our own kids or our own families.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, Powerful film, really. As far as ratings go,
Yeah,
obviously it's an R-rated film.
yeah,
There's interestingly, there's not any overt sexual anything,
no,
but there's a lot of suggested stuff.
yeah,
Of course, a lot of foul language.
yeah,
There's some
violent.
violence, a little bit of gore, that
Yeah,
kind of thing. So, folks, if you're going to watch it, or if you've seen it, if you're going to watch it, be aware of those things.
Yeah.
But it is a really well done film.
Well,
Uh,
I
I
think,
said I was sitting as I'm sitting and watching it, you know, like the words came out of my mouth. This is superbly acted. I mean, it really, really was.
I do think another thing that I found really interesting about Sean's character, not Sean, sorry, Jimmy's character
Sean
played by
Penn's character, right?
Sean, was that he knows he's making the wrong decisions. A couple times in the movie, he clearly has a either an internal dialogue that you feel very aware of, or at the very end, the climax of the movie at the end, he verbalizes, this is not what I should be doing, you know.
Right.
And he has another moment that where he goes like, God was almost looking down on me when I killed um, just Ray. It wasn't like saying no, no, but it was like, you're making the wrong decision. And I think what's fascinating is it reminds us that a lot of times we know what we should be doing and we still do what we shouldn't do.
I think Paul was it Paul
Yeah,
said something
Paul
like
said that.
that.
Well,
There's
Romans
pretty
1, I
good
believe.
scripture on that one.
But it is kind of fascinating to think about why do we, because we've all had those moments where we know we shouldn't do something and yet we still do it.
We
And
do
it,
it
it
anyway.
is fascinating to reflect on why how do we develop, maybe how is better, how do we develop as people a better way of saying, nope, that's the wrong choice, I'm not going to make it, you know.
Yeah, and you know what is the ethic that is at work in our minds
Yeah,
when we do that, right? Is it self-preservation? Is it familial preservation, or what is it? But there's some sort of ethic that is counter to Christian faith in some way, shape, or form because we know it's wrong. We know this is not a good thing, and yet we end up doing it anyway.
yeah. And then you also have the interesting reality with Dave where you never, because he dies, of course, gets killed. It's never allowed to unpack. You kind of have to unpack it yourself. But you have to wonder why he ultimately says, "Yeah, I killed her." You
Yeah,
know, you
yeah,
know, and it makes me wonder if, because the opening, or not the opening scene, but one of the first scenes where she and her girlfriends are partying at the bar, and he's looking at her, and there's clearly a longing, and you could read it as he's sexually desiring her. But at the end of the movie, he seems to articulate what it was, and it was a desire to be young and carefree and
right.
have that moment of joy where all you're thinking about is how much fun you're having. And he never got that. He never got just a moment of abandonment.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a sense that, you know, I mean the surface sense, right? It's self-preservation because Jimmy said, if you tell me the truth, I won't kill you,
yeah,
right? But then I think there's also a sense here that Dave is a terminally broken person.
yeah,
And I think there's a sense that he knows either way Jimmy's going to kill him.
yeah,
And so whatever he says doesn't matter. He just wants it over,
yeah.
you
And
know?
there seems to be even a part of me that wondered, was the person that wrote this script. I don't know. I didn't look up who wrote the script, but there was a part of me that wondered, was that person playing with the idea of, do we have a tendency sometimes to say, well, I would have? Because it was almost like, I wonder if the Dave character was like, I thought about it. I thought about taking that. I thought about, being so angry or jealous of her that I was going to kill her. So I thought about it. You know, there's a part of me that wonders if it's kind of that inner dialogue of, what Jesus warns us about, that even what we think about can lead places we don't want to go. And so sometimes be mindful that, don't dwell on the thought. Let the thought go so that you don't end up down the road doing something you regret doing.
Yeah. Well, as far as writing, the it's been this. the film is based on a book by Dennis Lehane.
Yeah.
The screenplay was adapted by, oh gosh, I read the name and now it slips my mind. But the author said apparently held back this book for a while.
Mm,
Like people wanted to make it, and finally he allowed it to be made into a film when he talked to and worked with Clint Eastwood.
mm,
And the story that I read, at least, was that they lifted a lot of the dialogue directly out of the book.
mm.
So, you might be looking more at the author of the book than the screenwriter as far as the dialogue goes.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it, that's the other thing. Eastwood was interviewed in 2005 about this film, so 2 years after.
Yeah.
And he said the ending was intended to be ambiguous
Mm.
because you don't know. We do, like the cycle continues. Again, violence begets violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all that being said, it's it's a it's a really great film.
It is. Yeah.
It really is. I was really emotional watching it. So
Oh, it's a very good film. It
it's
really is.
it's definitely worth your time. And there's some amazing themes here that I think, we could dig into further if we
Yeah,
had more
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
that we don't. Now I want to give a quick shout out. I showed the book last week, this book, right? This
Yeah.
gigantic New York Times book, which is great. But I picked up a book this week
Oh,
that's written by one of my favorite YouTube personalities, a guy who reviews films. His name is Chris Stuckman,
okay.
and it's called The Film Buff's Bucket List. Now,
Okay.
it's only 50 films, but it's 50 films made since 2003, I think.
Cool.
So, films that he's reviewed.
Yeah.
Now, there's a checklist in the back, and I've already checked off the ones I've seen.
Okay. There we go.
So we'll run through that and see if there's anything that Jonathan hasn't seen. All right.
Sounds good.
Unbreakable.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Spirited Away, we saw. We
Yeah.
did the podcast for it. Donnie Darko. I'm
I have
sure
not seen that. So
you've never seen Donnie Darko. Okay, that's
um,
a good one. We'll keep that on the list because there's another one that I would love to do if you haven't seen, and I have to look down the list and remember which one it was. Uh ah, The Babadook.
no, I haven't seen it.
Never seen The Babadook.
No.
Okay. I would love to do that one. I have seen it. It's a horror film, but it's not like it's more of a suspense kind of.
Is it a anime or what is it?
No, 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 no. It's a live action. I just want to see. I want to look and see where it might be available. It's from 2014, and it's on Netflix.
Okay.
It's available on Netflix.
Could you send
Um,
me the spelling of it and just do it?
yeah, it's Babadook, The Babadook.
Okay.
Okay. The basic premise is little boy finds a book,
Yeah.
a little, scary story book, and
Yeah.
then it kind of comes to life.
Okay.
But it is so much deeper and layered than that. And I think and again, it's not like it's not gory or anything like that. It is a very suspenseful film.
Okay.
So um and it's a good film.
Sure.
I really enjoy it. So let's watch that this week. The
Sounds
Babadook
good.
called. Okay. And we'll fill Evan in, and maybe he'll someday come back from vacation.
He's got to do three in a row.
He's what's he been on vacation, like 6 weeks this summer or something?
It's gonna be Evan month when he gets back.
Well, we already told him he's got to do solo taxi driver, right?
Yeah, he's gonna do a solo taxi driver. Yep.
We'll have to find a few more. Oh, what's the other one? The Michael Caine film, Falling Down. He'll have to do
Yeah.
that one on his own, right? Stop.
Yeah.
All right, man. Uh, so bottom line, folks, Mystic River, great film. If you're so inclined, do watch it. And this week we're going to watch The Babadook. For those who don't like scary movies, you might want to skip that one. But it is, I will say up front, it's a really great and much deeper than its surface film. So, which you don't see a whole lot of in horror movies, right? Horror movies are generally pretty straightforward, slasher, bad guy.
Yeah.
This has got a lot more depth to it. So, that's what we're going to watch this week, friends. Until next week, keep on finding God in the dark. We'll see you all next week. Take care and God bless.
Bye.
Thanks for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast. If you're enjoying these discussions, please consider hitting the like button down below or subscribing to follow along. We put out weekly episodes on Friday mornings, and we are so glad that you're finding this discussion of theology and film entertaining enough to follow along with us. Take care and God bless, friends.